the world's most powerful particle accelerator. The Large Hadron Collider will reopen today after 3 years of being shut down for improvements.
A whole new reality has opened up. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people see things differently, remember them differently.
And a group of scientists believes that the results could prove the existence of parallel universes.
The shadows of these parallel worlds overlap with ours. And if we're smart enough, we can dive into them and grab their resources and pull them back into ours.
I mean, we're talking about products that you thought you knew. We're talking about logos.
You know, someone once said that acting is the enchanted wand that turns words into magic. I'm talking about words like, I could have been a contender. Here's looking at you, kid. Life is like a box of chocolates. All shining examples of how a few simple words become cinematic legend.
When you're at the Oscars, you don't quote a famous line wrong.
Life is like a box of chocolates.
Or otherwise it would be plastered in the newspaper.
That became part of the vocabulary of America. If you build it, they will come, has inspired a lot of people.
If you build it, he will come.
Absolute proof that these changes, many of them, there's no denying that something really, really crazy is going on.
I'm, of course, aware of the famous Star Wars Mandela Effect, and it's one of the biggest out there.
No, I am your father. Luke, I am your father.
Luke, I am your father.
Luke, I am your father.
Luke, I am your father.
Hey, what do you want? This is CNN or Luke, I'm your father?
No, I am your father.
Seems to me like things that we thought were one way are another way, like Kit Kat. Picture the Coca-Cola logo, Fruit Loops. Yeah, it used to be spelled fruit, but now it's F-R-O-O-T. Curade, right? Curade Band-Aids, OxyClean. How about those Skechers? Do you remember Cup of Noodles?
There's a lot of residual Sex in the City-ness out there online. There's a lot of Facebook reality residue of Sex in the City.
Sarah Jessica Parker, Sex in the City.
Sex in the City. Sex in the City.
Sex in the City.
Sex in the City.
Sex in the City.
Sex in the City. Jessica Parker, Cynthia Nixon, Kristen Davis, and Kim Cattrall.
And, you know, you just kind of feel Sex in the City fever all over New York. And, you know, you just kind of feel Sex in the City fever all over New York.
If there are other universes, they are likely next to ours. And this actually relates to my theory of the Mandela Effect and how the particle accelerator altered the weight of one electron and therefore destroyed our universe and shifted us into the universe that is directly next to it, and therefore things are different in this universe.
Here we have, in CERN, Switzerland, a huge wheel. Inside that wheel is a Hindu god, and his name is Shiva. He does a dance of destruction inside that wheel.
There are some stories that are said at CERN about dimensional beings or satanic portals and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff.
We have the evidence right before us. We have CERN saying this is what they wanted to do. Not to mention in their video with a little smile on his face like some freak, the guy's sitting there with a Mandela sign and Bond number 1. The first Bond, his last name was Nelson. Nelson Mandela, the Mandela Effect.
Something inexplicable is happening throughout the world, where almost half the population say they remember things from the past being different or changed, as if they come from another timeline, or two slightly different ones have merged together. Millions adamantly claim famous movie scenes appear demonstrably altered, and popular TV show titles, spellings of celebrities' names, corporate logos and brands, key biblical verses, and other cultural touchstones are not what they used to be. Now, a growing number of people want to know if history is being edited, perhaps by advances in quantum computing, or quantum physics experiments being conducted by the CERN particle collider in Switzerland. In this movie, we reach out to top experts, searching for answers.
The Mandela Effect got its name because there was a very large segment of the population that believed that Nelson Mandela died decades earlier, and then suddenly his recent death was announced, so their memory didn't jibe with reality.
People everywhere are experiencing this, and they don't understand it. There are what I believe to be proofs of it. So I went from, I'd say for maybe about 5 or 6 months, I was someone that was like, well, maybe I'm just remembering it wrong, and I kind of fed it that way. I put it out as, well, we could be remembering it wrong, but why would they do this?
When you look at the big platforms like YouTube, TikTok, there aren't millions of views, there are billions. Billions of people are interested in this topic. You gotta wonder why it's not taken more seriously by the mainstream, because it's obviously a fascination to people, and a whole lot of people believe it with their whole hearts, that memory isn't jibing up with reality, and that's possibly a problem. My name is Mark LaFlamme. Last name is L-A-F as in Frank, L-A-M-M-E. I've been a reporter at the Sun Journal in Lewiston, Maine since 1995. There's a photo on a table in my mother's living room that's haunted me my whole life. When I was a child, basically I had to walk by that photo every time I went through the living room. So I saw it thousands of times. And I recall with utter clarity that in the photo, I'm standing next to my father, my brother's standing next to my father. Young me was on the right, my brother was on the left of our father. And then one day, I don't remember exactly when it was, I walked by that photo and suddenly young Mark is on the left of my father, my brother's on the right of my father. And I told as many people as I could about this. I say, something's going on here. I seem to have switched places in this photo that's been there for years and years. Nobody believes it. A lot of eye rolling, scoffing, but I swear I was once on the right of my father, and to this day, as far as I know, I'm on the left of my father. And it creeps me out. I go visit my mother, I can't even look at that photo anymore. It's my own personal Mandela effect.
Jacob Israel, Jacobisrael. Currently, I'm an author. I also have a YouTube channel as well as a website. The first time that I noticed anything was a little bit off was, it must have been around 2015, maybe, early 2015. I went into a dollar store and they had this big container that would keep all of the Coke and the Diet Coke in it. And on the side of it was the Coca-Cola logo. And I walked in and I was immediately baffled because it seemed that Coca-Cola changed their logo all of a sudden. And I was thinking, my goodness, this is a brand that they've spent probably, countless millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars on advertising this logo that was ingrained in my mind since I was a child and everyone else. And all of a sudden, they changed their whole logo, which was just strange to me. Well, the logo was right on the side of the machine, and it was Coca-Cola, and there was a little dot in between. There was no wavy line. That I remember it being Coca, kind of like scripty letters, and Cola, and then being like a slash or like a dash in between or a wavy line in between. But now there was like this little dot. And what was strange about that was I thought to myself, why would they do such a thing? So I went back and I researched and looked it up, and I found that the logo had never been changed. It's always been completely different than I remember, and most likely everybody that I know, at least my age, remember. It was very strange to me. And that's kind of what led me to the Mandela Effect. It was like one of those moments where all of a sudden it's, not everything is, it's like the Twilight Zone. Not everything is what you think it is. And to find out that it was never changed and that logo hadn't had a dash or a slash since like a 1930 or there was no reason why I would have ever seen it So I just continued to dig more and more and more. What I found was the logo for Volvo all of a sudden was a female symbol instead of just a circle. The Volkswagen logo, there was a Volkswagen. When I grew up, there was this Volkswagen bug that was on my block that I would walk past every day. That Volkswagen logo I knew very well. And if I asked somebody, hey, what does the Volkswagen logo look like? They would say it's a V and a W. I would say, well, are they separated or are they kind of blended together? And people would say, well, they're one piece. But I found out, no, they weren't one piece at all. There were so many strange things. And that led me to find out about movie quotes, that I'm a movie guy. So when all of these famous movie lines I found out weren't the way I remembered them, I said, there's something going on here. And I found hundreds and hundreds of things that were different, things that just, they couldn't be explained, things that, you know, it went a lot further than just the Berenstain Bears, right? Where everybody said, oh, it's the Berenstain Bears.
I think I first learned about the Mandela Effect probably in an internet forum where people were passionately discussing the Berenstain Bears. One group was arguing that it was Berenstein, one was arguing that it was Berenstain, and I just wondered what these people are arguing about, so I jumped in and, you know, followed the argument. I'm also not a big Berenstain Bears fan, but if you look at that TV guide, and it says in the TV guide, Berenstain Bears will be airing at such hour, you expect that they would get that right. I mean, their whole product is about telling you about TV shows. They're gonna get the name right. And they spelled it Berenstein with the E instead of an A at the end. And that's the way most people remember that being spelled. And that's the way you would expect it to be spelled. That's the way it's said. And I have no personal involvement with the Berenstain Bears, so I didn't have an opinion on that. But that led me to some other user saying, hey, what about Mr. Rogers? He never said in the neighborhood. And I said, the hell he didn't. So I went off looking for video clips or anything I could find showing Mr. Rogers saying in the neighborhood. And he doesn't. I looked just last night. I still can't find it.
These are cultural touchstones. These are like pop culture icons and lines that we've heard, you know, repeated again and again and again.
I have fairly clear memories of watching Mr. Rogers, and he's coming out on the stage, or coming through the set, he's buttoning his sweater, he's strolling through his little neighborhood, through his home, and he's singing in the neighborhood. And he looks at the camera, and he's a very reassuring and trustworthy fellow, so you trust what he's gonna say to you, and the song is very engaging, so you sing along. If I were writing the lyrics to the Mr. Rogers song, I would not write this neighborhood. Mr. Rogers is telling you that it's a wonderful day wherever your neighborhood happens to be. He wants every child watching that show to say, your neighborhood is wonderful, as is mine. He would not say, this neighborhood, which is basically saying, my little space in the world is great, yours may not be, which is not Mr. Rogers. You wouldn't write it that way. It makes no sense. And it also doesn't fall off the tongue as easily as the neighborhood does. It's got a better sing-song quality. It's better writing, frankly. Often you'll see somebody doing a parody of the Mr. Rogers songs. Everybody's done it. Eddie Murphy did it on Saturday Night Live to great acclaim.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Could you be mine? Would you be mine?
So as far as I'm concerned, Eddie Murphy and I are from the same timeline. He remembers it the same way I do. I'm very happy for that. I've heard that Tom Hanks is going to make a Mr. Rogers movie. I can see why he would fit in that role.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
I will be very curious to see Tom Hanks come out on that Mr. Rogers set. I'm very curious to see what he sings, because if he sings in this neighborhood, the movie's a flop as far as I'm concerned.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Please won't you be my neighbor?
For me, that wasn't an issue. For me, it was the Coca-Cola logo. It was Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump. Tom Hanks very famously reviewed all of his great performances and repeated what we remember, which was Forrest Gump when he said, life is like a box of chocolates.
Mom always said life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
But here's what's weird, is now it's life was like a box of chocolates.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Which is interesting because it becomes one of those questions, you know, was that almost kind of a tell of what's happening here? Because if life is like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're gonna get. If now somehow there's a way to affect things in the future or in the past, which is, some people even think that this is a theory. This is some kind of a proof of some kind of time travel, if you will. But if you can do that, then life was no longer, it's no longer a box of chocolates now, but it was. And now we have the Mandela Effect, which now, who knows?
As far as the Forrest Gump Mandela Effect, I'm fairly new to that one. I heard somebody say, it blows my mind that Tom Hanks never said life is like a box of chocolates. And I said, the hell he didn't. I actually went out and got that movie, threw it in my VCR and watched. I watched the whole thing, waited for that scene, and what do you know? He says life was like a box of chocolates.
I think it's pretty clear that everybody remembers Forrest Gump saying that on the bench. Some people have tried to explain it away with Sally Field later on in the movie saying it a bit differently.
Life is a box of chocolates, Forrest.
But we know that one scene, that's the one scene. And Tom Hanks himself, when he's replayed this scene, I mean, maybe he misremembered too, but Tom Hanks himself has said it the way we all remember.
And that's another one where, I mean, come on, I've heard that line too many times in the actual movie, and I remember it distinctly as life is like a box of chocolates. But, I mean, nowhere in the movie does he say it like that, so that's another one that blows my mind pretty well.
About 2 decades ago, David Letterman was hosting the Oscars, okay? And he was about to give the award out, well, he was leading up to the award for writing. And of course, he had a very well-prepared speech, and that year there were many very famous movies that were up. Forrest Gump was one of them. So when he gave his intro into this, he talked about how important it was for the writer, how incredible of an effect their words have, and how their words and their lines, famous lines like,
you know, someone once said that acting is the enchanted wand that turns words into magic. I'm talking about words like, I could have been a contender. Here's looking at you, kid. Life is like a box of chocolates. All shining examples of how a few simple words become cinematic legend.
The problem with this is that's not the line from the movie. So here you have David Letterman, and you have the Oscars, and you have the award being given out for best screenplay or best writing, and he gives this beautiful speech, and then he misquotes a bunch of the movies that were actually up for awards that year. And that's strange because you would think that they would get these famous lines that everybody will remember correct.
Yeah, if you're complimenting somebody on a specific piece of writing, you get that piece of writing right. And I think David Letterman's a very smart man. I think he would done his research and got the line right. So it seems like somebody would have come out and David Letterman's goof. David Letterman gets the famous line wrong. Or, you know, online forums, people would have jumped on him. It's just, yeah, that's residual evidence, I suppose. If David Letterman said it, he's remembering it the way most of us do. As far as I'm concerned, David Letterman and I are also in the same timeline.
At the same Academy Awards, David Letterman brings up Interview with a Vampire.
It's another blockbuster year for Hollywood. The motion picture Interview with a Vampire did over $100 million business.
Which, it doesn't exist that way anymore, even though it was one of my favorite books when I was younger. But it's not just that, it's Sex in the City.
Sarah Jessica Parker, Sex in the City.
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 It's not Sex in the City, it's now Sex and the City. And yet you have all of these perfumes and all of these other residual, examples that say Sex in the City. So in essence, products or merchandise that is used to either gain some steam off of the success of the series, Sex and the City. Labeling all of their product Sex in the City, but yet it's wrong, it just doesn't seem to make much sense. If you have a creative team that's working on a series like Sex in the City, Sex and the City now, and they now are presented with the reality that it was never the series that they thought they were writing for, that would be strange. They would probably be confused. I would think they'd be confused but some of them would probably try to, they would say, oh, maybe it's confabulation, or maybe they would believe, well, maybe I didn't remember it right. Some people, our mind is very interesting. When we're presented with something that's almost otherworldly, right? We will retreat back to, just acceptance. I'm just going to accept that that's just the world that I live in. And I will then imagine myself to, well, maybe I was a writer of Sex and the City. So these are things that could happen. If you brought all of the merchandise to them and said, well, look, it's not the series that you wrote, it might freak them out a little bit. Having a series that they understood to be Sex in the City now being Sex and the City, it would probably freak them out. When you have merchandise that's backing up a certain show, like if we're talking about Sex in the City, and you were bringing, we'll say, a cup that had the logo on it, and you would show it to a writer, and the writer would say, well, hang on a second, that's strange because that's not the name of the show. They would probably say, well, you got it wrong, because they would try to, in their mind, wrap their heads around the fact that what they know and what seems to be are two different things. The argument could be that, well, it wasn't approved. They got it wrong. This was made over in another country. So there are plenty of arguments to back up a lot of this stuff. Doesn't mean the arguments are true. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that they're excuses to try to explain something that has a mountain of evidence to the contrary.
Social media search algorithms, of course, push certain content in front of the viewer. And YouTube does this as much as anybody. Google does it. YouTube, I just remember the Mandela Effect bursting on the scene all at once. And everywhere you turn, there was a Mandela Effect video. Mandela Effect video. I don't know if the phenomenon itself is created because the people who engineer these algorithms wanted it to be, or if it came organically, but it definitely had an influence. These algorithms will make certain videos appear. If you watch one, they want to give you 10 more to watch. So it was easy to get sucked into the world of Mandela Effect if you were spending some time on any social media platform.
When I started sharing this with people that were close to me, people that I would just bump into at social events, it became kind of a party trick for me. I would say, hey, do you remember the the Ford logo? And I'd say, is that it? What's different about this logo? And they'd say, well, wait a minute, what's that little curly Q thing? I said, well, yeah, that's the logo. Or I would say to them things like, do you remember C-3PO had a silver leg?
He always had silver, but one of the issues was that the silver leg actually always reflected other things. It would reflect the gold leg, and it would reflect it in the desert, so it acted more as a mirror.
And I would just ask these questions just to kind of gauge people. And the more that I would do it, I would say, hey, can you finish this song for me? My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, and they would say M-E-Y-E-R.
My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R.
But now it's spelled M-A-Y-E-R, and people would think it was strange. But they would do what most people do, which is they would just, oh, well, it's like, I've just probably remembered it wrong. That's interesting. So then what I would do is that I would point out things like this. I would say, well, do you remember the movie Apollo 13? Do you remember the line, Houston, we have a problem? And they would say, oh yeah, I love that movie. I said, okay, well, that's not what he says. And they would immediately say, well, what do you mean? That's not what he says. At the time, I would say, now he says, Houston, we've had a problem. And that was years ago, okay? Now here's where it gets very interesting, because that's changed again. That flip-flopped back.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
So now, what I would tell people is, well, years ago it was this. You remember, Houston, we have a problem, and that's right now. But let's go to some movie misquote places. You know, like I would look up articles online, like BuzzFeed, top 20 movie misquotes, 2013, whenever it was. Back then, the number one that BuzzFeed had was Apollo 13. And it said, Houston, we have a problem. Misquote. Actual quote, it would say, Houston, we've had a problem. So that's just strange, because now we have evidence of big name online magazines doing top 20 movie misquotes, and their number one, they don't get it right?
I've talked to many people about the Mandela Effect. Some are completely unaware of them. Some people are passively interested. And then there are the people who have no interest at all, but then you tell them something like, hey, guess what Mr. Rogers didn't say in his theme song? And they go look for themselves. They come along. So yeah, I know people of all kinds. Some are scoffers, some are big believers, some are in the middle. They're just getting their feet wet. It's not too hard to entice somebody in, because almost everybody will remember one of these things differently than the reality is presenting it. For some it's Oscar Mayer, some it's Dolly's braces from Moonraker, another one that drives me crazy. And the James Bond movie Moonraker, one scene in it always stuck with me because it was kind of cute. The character known as Jaws smiles and shows off his metal burdened teeth. I mean, just like railroad tracks in his mouth. And the young character Dolly, she smiles back and her more dainty braces gleam back. And it's a funny moment in the movie, and it's kind of charming. And now they'll tell you that it never happened, because when Dolly smiles back, she's not wearing braces. And if that's the case, that whole scene does not make sense. Without the braces, that scene might not even, it doesn't even serve any purpose in there. It's the charm of her braces versus his big, ugly, scary braces that makes that scene work. So now when I go to YouTube and watch that scene and she's not wearing braces, boy, that just gets my mind racing all over again. I have heard of residual evidence in that Mandela Effect, including a commercial the actress did in which she is in fact wearing braces. And that makes sense because the scene works with braces, it doesn't work without them.
So you have all of these changes which are just deeply ingrained in people, from cinema to just, pop culture. All of these things that people know so well, thought they knew so well, seem to just be twisted just a little bit, just enough to get people to question whether or not what they remembered was real. Cultural touchstones like Field of Dreams, even, many say that Kevin Costner himself has said the exact same line that I remember. If you build it, they will come.
That became part of the vocabulary of America. If you build it, they will come, has inspired a lot of people.
But no. Now it's, if you build it, he will come.
If you build it, he will come.
And it's not just that movie. It's famous movies like Jaws.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Right? We're gonna need a bigger boat. He doesn't say we're gonna need a bigger boat. He says you're gonna need a bigger boat.
Luke, I am your father, is one of the most iconic lines ever recited in movie history, right? This video is for all the people who insist that the people experiencing the Mandela Effect phenomenon are simply misremembering the famous line. I do not understand anyone who can watch this and conclude that thousands of others, including myself, are all having confabulation and cognitive illusions.
I'm of course aware of the famous Star Wars Mandela Effect, and it's one of the biggest out there.
No, I am your father.
As far as I knew, and everybody I grew up with knew, Darth Vader did in fact say, Luke, I am your father.
I am your father.
We said it that way when we were playing in the backyard and pretending to be stormtroopers and such. I'm fairly convinced that the line works better with him saying, Luke, I am your father. By saying, no, I'm your father, it's more expositional. It just doesn't have the staying power. And I don't understand why people would still remember that line if it was written in such a lazy, sloppy way. Luke, I am your father, that's gonna stick. And it did, it's just they're telling us that it was never that way.
Why is it that we have all collectively forgotten these very famous pop culture iconic lines? Because perhaps there's more to the story. Perhaps this is the reason that they're the ones that are being affected, and it's not just a shrub that's on your property. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe it's to see collectively how people can relate, or how people can react, or if people will notice at all, to minor changes. Because if you won't notice minor things, and then you'll think, oh, well, I've remembered it wrong, what else can you change?
I'm aware of a lot of residual artifacts of the original dialogue there, or what could be taken as artifacts. I've seen countless commercials that use Luke, I am your father. You see that all over the place. It's been done in comedies.
And this is hard to wrap your mind around, but if you think about it, it actually makes sense. When you have all of this residual evidence from television to cartoons and everyone mimicking this famous line.
Luke, I am your father.
Luke, I am your father.
Oh, Luke, I am your father.
I'm your father, Luke.
Luke, I am your father.
Luke, I am your father. See?
When you have these famous lines parroted again and again and again, when you hear Luke, I'm your father, when your children are playing dress up and they're saying, Luke, I'm your father, because they came out and they just saw the film for the first time, right? When you have an actor in a film adamant that he said the line that we all remember but now doesn't exist in the Star Wars franchise, which is Luke, I'm your father, which everybody remembers, as opposed to no, I'm your father. Very different, very different. When the actor himself, James Earl Jones, says that's what was in the script.
When I first saw the dialogue that said, Luke, I am your father, I said to myself, he's lying. I wonder how they're gonna play that lie out.
Everybody remembers it as Luke, I am your father, but when you tell them it didn't actually go down that way, they tend to shrug it off. And I don't understand why, because that's one of the most famous lines in Hollywood history. You'd think it would rile people to tell them, no, he never said that. And it riles me. Even though I'm not a big Star Wars fan, you're telling me that Darth Vader never said, Luke, I am your father. I find it bewildering and a little troubling. James Earl Jones is the man voicing Darth Vader. If you can't trust him to tell you the way it really went, I mean, who can you trust? I've never seen James Earl Jones say, no, I am your father. He says, Luke, I am your father, because that's the way it feels best, that's the way it's best expressed, and that's the way James Earl Jones said it, as far as I'm concerned. I'm a big 2.5 Men fan myself, and I remember the episode where James Earl Jones played himself, and he was gonna record a voicemail for Alan Harper, and he said, which way do you want it? Do you want it, Luke, I am your father? I mean, he didn't say, do you want no, I'm your father? He said, he offered Luke, I am your father, as his most famous line, as you would expect him to.
All right, what do you want? This is CNN or Luke, I'm your father?
When we're growing up and we know these lines and we see everywhere on TV and everywhere in the media kind of parroting the same line, and then you find out that was never the line, questions should be asked.
I'm aware of geographical Mandela Effect. Some people say Australia is not where they remember it being. For some, it's New Zealand, and for some, it's South America. They say it's shifted this way, or is further north, or whatever. I don't have a lot of those. I guess I just never studied the globe enough. We've all seen the images from Tiananmen Square a few thousand times over our lives, and the way I remember it is the man crossing in front of the tank. He looks angry, he looks defiant, he waves at him, he tells these big, powerful tanks to stop, and they do stop. And the man goes on his way. And it's a powerful moment because one man was powerful enough to stop this whole army that was out on the streets. People, I mean, I think half the population now swears that they remember the tanks running that man over, which of course is a completely different message. One man can't make a difference. The tank's just going to run you over. You know, and I don't argue with those people. I mean, maybe in the timeline they're from, the man did get run over. But in my timeline, he yelled at the tanks, he held up a hand defiantly, and he went on his way. I've talked to a few people who remember just seeing it all over the news, the guy getting run over, and what a horror that was. Just this man who was a second ago so defiant and alive, suddenly disappearing under the tracks of this tank. I mean, I don't remember it that way, but I respect what they remember from their own timelines. The Snow White Mandela Effect troubles me as much as any of them do, because who does not remember the line, "Mirror, mirror on the wall"? How many times have we heard that our whole lives? How many times have we said it, seen it in movies and in other references?
Mirror, mirror on the wall, show the hardest workers here of all.
Everybody would agree that she says mirror, mirror on the wall, but now we're told she never said that. She says magic mirror on the wall.
What wouldst thou know, my queen?
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
Which is just not as musical. It's not as profound. It's not as comforting. I don't know. It lacks something. And I mean, everybody I know, you can trip anybody up with this Mandela Effect, because everybody I know remembers it as mirror, mirror on the wall.
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Mirror, mirror on the wall. Mirror, mirror on the wall.
The Fruit Loops I could go either way on. Jiffy, I swear I remember Jiffy peanut butter, but now they're telling you, no you don't. It was Jif. I mean, I swear I remember Jiffy peanut butter. They're telling me it's Jif now.
In June of 2016, I produced a video about Jiffy peanut butter. I called some of the 15+ restaurants I have discovered that all serve a Jiffy burger with peanut butter. I was wondering what kind of peanut butter you guys put on that.
I think, yeah, I mean, obviously it started with Jiffy, but...
We use the Jiffy, just creamy peanut butter.
Oh, okay. So you actually use Jiffy on it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I know there are many others associated with products, but yeah, none of those hit me as hard. Cultural references tend to hit me harder. And you know, I watched videos, I went online to see what others are saying, and each time I'd come across a Mandela Effect, they'd say, in the car in which John F. Kennedy was assassinated, there were 6 passengers. Like so many people, over the course of my life, I've had a very avid interest in the JFK assassination, the various theories about it, the political ramifications. So I, like so many people, have studied at length. I've watched the videos over and over, the Zapruder films, every piece of footage you could get on it. So I've seen that clip probably thousands of times, like most people. There's no way in my mind you could tell me there were 6 people in that car. I've seen it so many times. There were 4 people, 2 in front, 2 in back, Jackie and JFK in the back. Now you look at those clips, there's a middle seat with 2 people in there too. And that blows my mind more than anything, I think. The car JFK was assassinated had 4 people. I would almost swear to that. All I remember is Governor Connolly was in front of JFK. I don't remember the intricacies. I just remember what my own eyes saw, and that was 4 people sitting in the car. From what I understand, there's residual evidence of this one as well. In at least one museum is a replica car, a replica of the car JFK was sitting in when he was assassinated, and that car has 4 seats, not 6. And that's in an esteemed museum. I don't understand how somebody would make a mistake of that magnitude by leaving 2 middle seats out. So I would call that residual evidence. And I mean, the more I read about the Mandela Effect, the more it just blew me away, spooked me, and just kind of makes you rethink everything you thought you knew. I still actively search for more Mandela Effects coming out, and they are coming out all the time.
Does it annoy you, and I'm asking you this because it drives me crazy when people refer to you as Sally Fields?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't care.
think so. You don't care?
Well,
Why do I care and you don't?
I don't know, Jimmy, I don't know. But they always have.
If you're gonna fall asleep when I snap my fingers, you're gonna think you are Sally Fields, and right next to you is Burt Reynolds.
Oh,
and
yeah,
Smokey and the Bandit.
Say Smokey and the Bandit.
In 1984, Sally Fields delivered an iconic line during her Best Actress acceptance speech for an Academy Award. People have been repeating this line over and over for decades.
I guess this means you like me. You really like me.
You like me. You really like me. You like me. You really like me.
You like me. You really like me.
However, the Sally Fields who said "you like me, you really like me" existed in another reality.
I want to say thank you to you. I haven't had an orthodox career, and I've wanted more than anything to have your respect. The first time I didn't feel it, but this time I feel it, and I can't deny the fact that you like me. Right now, you like me.
During her acceptance speech, Fields said, quote, "I can't deny the fact that you like me now, you like me." Didn't you say you really, really like me in there somewhere as well?
And I'd like to say thank you to you because you like me. You really like me.
Okay everyone, I have an update to the Sinbad Genie movie video that I just did. It had quite a huge response. A lot of people are searching that on the internet right now. It's one of the first Mandela Effects to kind of go mainstream. If you're not aware, the Sinbad movie, Shazaam, that many people remember seeing, including myself, has blown up the past week.
Oh, man, it feels good to get out that thing. Woo! Kind of cramped up in there. Should have took you long enough, Tina.
So in case you weren't aware, this seems to be one of the first things to go mainstream.
Heard of the Shazam Kazam controversy?
Yes.
The genie thing?
Yeah, 100%. When I got this job, everyone was like, wait, wasn't that the Shaq movie when he was a genie? I was like, no, that's Kazam.
Yeah, because Shazam was a movie, a genie movie starring Sinbad that doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist. This is a complete Mandela Effect thing, and I still haven't been able to figure this out.
Did you remember do you have a memory of the Sinbad movie? Me too.
100%
no,
I do.
It was real. I remember it.
Yeah, but can you find it online?
No!
No, you can't!
It's so freaky.
I don't know what's going on with this. It's very, very, very strange. And only parts of the population remember it and other parts don't.
Seemed to me like maybe there was more to what was going on with this. Like maybe there's a deeper mystery here that people haven't even begun to understand. I started thinking that maybe this was like a little bit of a test or something to get people to question, like if we tweak things just a little bit, how will people deal with that? How will people react to that? And this, I know it sounds absurd to think that, fundamental reality as we know it can change. But this lines up with, sciences of today. It's not like this is anything that's far-fetched. This all seemed to happen and coincide with some other strange things like CERN and their collider and the firing up from it, and where things that had never been done before in our timeline, if you will, my life. Now, we had people that were doing things that were, other physicists and researchers were very nervous about. They thought that, they would create a black hole there, and the research that was going on was just so interesting to me that I just dug in, and I thought, well, I wonder if the two are connected somehow. So when I started to look into this and I started to research it and I started to dig into it, I started trying to come up with ideas of how something like this could happen. How possibly could this happen? That led me down that path to look into string theory, to look into quantum physics, to look into spooky action at a distance, to look into even time travel. Because if you actually start to peel back the layers on this, these are things that are discussed widely and are funded, heavily. I have a couple of ideas. And, the first idea was, of course, there's the multiverse, we'll say, because this is a theory that there are an infinite amount of uses and that with every decision we make, it branches off into a new reality. And what they were doing and trying to do at CERN is a collider where they're smashing particles. In quantum physics, there's 11 dimensions. So you have the idea that perhaps what we consider to be reality, maybe, you know, in our perspective, it seems normal. But from a different dimension, perhaps not. And my favorite thought on this is simulation theory. Simulation theory is basically we're in a big computer simulation. And there's a lot of science that backs this up. If you're playing a game, you go into that dimension. Like right now, VR is a big thing, okay? And when you're playing a VR game, you're in your headset, you're in your room or your apartment, but you're also in another dimension called whatever the game is. Now, an update can be sent out into that game. So if you're playing that game for months, and in that game there's a Coca-Cola logo, and they decide, I'm just gonna change the logo, it would change in real time. You wouldn't know the difference except for you're the viewer, you've been there, you exist, but the reality has changed a little bit. In the Matrix, it would be called déjà vu. Déjà vu, where something has changed, where AI is busy changing reality as we know it. That makes probably the most sense to me, is the fact that we could be possibly in some sort of simulation.
When you start looking into the potential causes of the Mandela Effect, it does something to you. I mean, there are theories about alternate universes, other timelines. The string theory supports some of this stuff. Modern science supports some of these things. You get into simulation theory. Are we just a simulation and somebody's messing with our history? To me, it's alternate realities or entangled timelines. That really troubles me because the implications of that are just huge. If we're in one timeline now, but we were in another before, and that's why we're seeing evidence of one while we're in another, I mean, that just brings up a whole lot of questions. I mean, are there other timelines we might jump into, and how different things might be there? Maybe these little cultural differences will be suddenly big ones. You go home and your wife's name isn't Corey, it's Sheila. You don't have a dog, you have a cat. Your car isn't a two-door, it's a four-door, and you don't work where you thought. Someday, if the timelines really get that entangled, I mean, that's insanity. And then when you try to complain about it, they'll say, you're nuts. Your wife's name has always been Sheila. And you'll end up in an institution. The idea of entangled timelines troubles me even more than the idea that we might be in a simulation with a glitch, because the implications are much greater.
There are many possibilities for the origins of the Mandela Effect. Some people think it's a simple case of mass misremembering, but the prevailing notion involves the idea that there are other universes existing right next to ours. This has led many to theorize that the Mandela Effect was caused by experiments conducted with the Hadron Particle Collider at CERN, and we somehow altered the weight of a single electron, which then caused a major chain reaction that could have destroyed our universe. When our universe was eliminated, all the energy from our universe was transferred to the universe that is right next to ours. And therefore, things are different in this universe.
So there are a lot of theories as to how this, could have started. One of them, of course, is multiple timelines coming together. That something went down at CERN when there was all sorts of strangeness happening above their location around the same time, and then everything seemed to change. Some people would say, oh, the Mayan calendar. We entered a new reality, where maybe two realities kind of blended together, where the logo in that reality was a little different, the line in that reality was a little bit different. So then we would change, but some from the first reality would exist in the new reality, whereas some in that reality would exist. I don't believe that to be the case, but people believe it. I, for one, think that it could be a number of things. Some people say that we can collectively change things, like just with faith. The scriptures say with faith you can say to this mountain, move into the sea. So why can't we collectively change things? The one that I think is the most credible is simulation theory, made very famous by Elon Musk when he was being interviewed, and he told everybody most likely we are in a simulation and we just don't know it.
The strongest argument for probably being a simulation, I think, is the following. 40 years ago, we had Pong, like 2 rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be, billions of such, computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
So we could be in the simulation. We don't know who is in charge of the simulation. Could be aliens, some people say. It could be angels, some people say. It could be fallen angels or demons, some people say. It could be just artificial intelligence. But we exist in this moment. So like when we go to sleep at night, we dream, we enter other realities. Who's to say that we aren't inserted in this reality? Our consciousness is here, but this is some kind of an actual simulation. And so the way to, say, test those that are in it would be to make minor changes. Minor changes to Curious George, where's the tail, right? To depends. What do you mean it depends? It's not depends, it's depend. To make minor changes to things that we all remember and know well, just to see who can be manipulated and who can't, who's asleep, who's as some people say, an NPC, or who's waking up, like Neo in the Matrix. That's why I think this whole topic is so exciting, because it gives us the opportunity to believe that life is more than just working at the Piggly Wiggly and doing what we do. So life is so interesting that things literally change. I've witnessed it. I've witnessed it go one way to the other way. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it happened or why it's happening, but I know that it gives me a lot of hope. Stephen Hawking, one of the most famous physicists ever, he warned people about CERN. He was very adamant that this was not something that we should be doing. He said that he believed that it could create a black hole that would basically just suck everything into existence. He was very concerned about this. He also was concerned with a couple of other things. He was concerned with taking general relativity and somehow marrying it with quantum physics, because the math adds up in both. But here you have something that doesn't make any sense. Here you have something that makes sense. How do you find the two together? Hawking, his post-mortem work, when he passed away, he published a work about the holographic universe. Now this kind of goes into my idea of us possibly existing in some kind of a simulation, in some kind of a hologram, but being more than that. The scriptures say, actually, that we're seated in heavenly places, that we exist here now, but that we actually exist in another dimension, another realm, in heaven itself. Hawking believed that we existed as information, ones and zeros, like that we're AI or something. But he believed that we existed it on the horizon of a black hole. Almost like a black hole was like a movie projector and projecting reality outward, so that we actually existed there, but we're experiencing reality here. But none of this is real. So this was his last famous work. So you have so many people that are bright people basically saying the Mandela Effect could exist, because that would be a proof of sorts that this isn't what we think it is, and that it is subject to change.
When you start thinking about, okay, maybe these timelines are merging now, what might have triggered that? If you start looking into that, that's even more troubling. Some will say it's the super collider at CERN, which fired up right around the time Mandela Effect streamed into popularity. I mean, they do things with particles there that we can't even conceive of. High-speed collisions, creating tiny black holes. You want to scoff at those, but when you understand the science that a place like CERN does, the idea that they might have messed up our timeline or caused some grand fluctuation, it's not that crazy. And if you're willing to believe there's at least a possibility of it, then it gets really troubling, because what else are they doing? What are they going to do next? What are the other the big consequences of smashing particles together in a way that humans have never done before. The statue of Shiva is still in front of CERN, and she's the goddess of chaos and destruction, which is an odd choice of statue to put in front of a place that does science in hopes of improving humanity. The goddess of destruction, it doesn't fit with me, but I mean, scientists are strange folks, I guess.
CERN is the largest collider in the world, and probably one of the most funded, and probably one of the most people are very concerned because it seems very occult. They've done some very strange things, like they got in trouble for performing a sacrifice, a human sacrifice, a fake human sacrifice that they filmed and released online in front of their, what they call their mascot, which is Shiva, the destroyer, which is the creator and the destroyer of worlds. It's a symbol. It's almost like the Ouroboros. It's a god. It was a gift that was given to them. It's a very spooky gift. And they actually, the physicists that were there, or the students that were there, they just did a mock sacrifice. But that's not the only weird thing about CERN. These people, even the very location itself, is on top of a temple for Apollyon. Apollyon, who was, like Shiva, was the angel from the bottomless pit who had the key to all things. It's interesting. Yeah, even CERN's logo, even the logo, many point out the fact that it looks like 666. And they have artist residence as well. A couple of years ago, they had a time traveler occultist who was an artist in residence there. They've done a lot of strange things. They've released videos. Their happy video, where of course the Mandela Effect was addressed by one of their theoretical physicists there, where he was making jokes, where he had two signs around his neck. One said Mandela and the other said Bond number 1. And he said, we're behind it, basically. And Bond number 1, the first film, the first Bond was Nelson. Barry Nelson, I think was his name. So Nelson Mandela. So the guy's taking credit for the Mandela Effect. Now, he could have been joking, because a lot of people talked about that. But once again, very strange. Yeah, the people that are involved have said strange things. The heads of it have said things like, sure, we're going to open up another dimension, but we're only opening it up a little bit. Maybe something will come out. Maybe we'll put something in. It's very strange. Their idea is that if they could open up these portals to other, we'll say other realities, or that they can somehow get energy, and it could be an energy source. I think it's pretty spooky. Portals opening up, yeah. This is something that we see these videos all the time of this strange circular smoke clouds, and we see all sorts of strange things. And there are people that believe there's actually scientific evidence that there are these like stargates and from ancient times that are found and hidden. And I think we know very little about reality. So perhaps this, a little testing's going on. We're going to see how much they can take. We're going to see if any of them are awake. We're going to see if any of them are getting out of their box.
The Wall Street Journal published a headline when CERN fired up saying, CERN may open a portal to hell. And at the time, you might scoff at that, but now, years later, in retrospect, when you got the Mandela Effect happening and you know more about the science being done at CERN, that kind of makes you scratch your head and wonder, and maybe even worry a little bit about whether the Wall Street Journal was looking into the future more than we should have been.
A lot of people were concerned with what CERN was doing, and of course, articles were written, many articles were written, Wall Street Journal being one of them, where the salacious headline was, CERN could open up a portal to hell. These are things that they would write to, whether or not they believed it, at least there was enough being given to them from the people they were interviewing that they thought that it could be a possibility. And there was some kind of outcry about that. People were worried what would come out. A lot of these people, like the creator, there's this thing called the D-Wave computer. The guy who is in charge of the head guy, and he's doing these great presentations, and he's trying to, lure people to come work for D-Wave.
The shadows of these parallel worlds overlap with ours, and if we're smart enough, we can dive into them and grab their resources and pull them back into ours.
Yeah, Geordie Rose himself, he said many times, the whole goal of this is to change the very fabric of reality, to take from one dimension to bring into another dimension, to take from this dimension and then to share in this dimension. And what they're saying basically validates the idea that this could possibly already be going on. Are people playing God? Are people playing God today? Is that what they're doing? Right? Now, there are only a couple of these computers, these quantum computers in certain areas. Lockheed Martin, I believe, has one. Google has one. He says that we're trying to open up, we're trying to release, as Elon Musk says, the demon. These are the words that they use, that we're trying to bring back the old gods. And he uses very disturbing imagery when he says this. But he means it, because he says that AI of this level would see us as ants.
While researching the Mandela Effect and therefore researching CERN, you certainly hear a lot of disturbing things, including some reports that scientists there have reported seeing apparitions, demons, things that we're not supposed to see. They come from other dimensions. If you poke a hole in the fabric of space and you peer into another dimension, what are you going to see there? I don't want to look, but these scientists, that's what they do. So there have been reports of some troubling things being seen, or maybe even coming through those holes in the fabric of time and space.
And playing God is something that they seem to do quite a bit. And here's the problem with that. If you're trying to, and they do this, they smash these particles and they create mini black holes, and they do these very, very, I believe, irresponsible tests to recreate the Big Bang. But they don't know what the effects are going to be to such a thing. You could be opening up doors that you can't then close. A lot of people think that since this happened, since CERN came online, the world is a very dark place. It's a very different place. It's a very almost insane place today. Everything seems to be changing. It's not what we remember it. And who's to say that if they continue on with this path, that things aren't going to get even worse? The irony of CERN being built on this, temple for Apollyon. Apollyon in Scripture is the angel that holds the key, that opens up the abyss where all that stuff comes out, all the spooky thing, all the locusts and the smoke and the torment, and it brings judgment on mankind. The angel of the abyss, Apollyon, holds the key. CERN has a key. They brag about that key. They hold that key. They do these videos where they're opening up these portals, these dimensions, and people are being sucked. It's very disturbing imagery. And that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to open up. But who's to say what's going to come out? And if that happened, well, we could be in for some trouble. Because, it's in Scripture. It's right there that in the end days, that, the angel will come, open up the bottomless pit, and all sorts of nonsense is going to come out of it. Welcome to 2023, going into 24. Yeah, well, they've been collecting CERN and they've been collecting antimatter. I've done videos on this. They have many experiments, from the Dune experiment to others. They store antimatter and then they've transported it, which is just, it's beyond me that they would do such a thing. Well, of course, antimatter weapons have been something that's in science fiction for years.
Fire antimatter spread.
And now here we have it. This is dangerous stuff. This is not, this is, once again, they're playing like they're God, and that's a problem.
I'm not overly religious, but I do have familiarity with the Bible, and I have all my life heard the reference to the lion lying down with the lamb, and it's a very nice image, and I remember my whole life. my paternal grandparents were very religious, and they would tell me some stories like this. And they always talked about the day when the lion would lay down with the lamb. So I remember that image distinctly. Only now I'm told it was never in the Bible. It's the wolf will lay down with the lamb. And for some reason, I just don't believe that's how it always was. And I don't believe that the wolf lying down with the lamb is as powerful an image as the lion lying down with the lamb. So that one troubles me. If they can mess with the Holy Bible, I mean, boy, that's an uncomfortable thought right there. The idea that the Bible is being tampered with through timelines or whatever phenomena we're involved in here, the fact that the Bible is targeted, that just opens some uncomfortable doors. Is there a satanic power behind this? Is there some malevolent force that wants to hit us where we hurt the most? People take comfort in the Bible. You start changing things in there. People are very resistant to changes in the Bible. So if you mess with the Bible in this way, it's not very comforting. I mean, I must have said the Lord's Prayer a few 100,000 times in my life. I mean, everybody has. If you went to Sunday school or an AA meeting even, you say the Lord's Prayer. And the Lord's Prayer, to me, is always talked about forgiving others' trespasses. And now they're saying, no, it's never said that. It's forgive our debts as we forgive the debts of others. And, I mean, to me, again, that's just not... It doesn't evoke as powerful an image as the original version, the version I remember. And for one thing, it's not as musical. It doesn't sound as nice. Forgive us our trespasses. And that sounds like something Jesus would say. Forgive us our debts. It sounds like something a banker would say. It just doesn't jibe with me. And I mean, I don't know if that's an actual change in the Bible, but I don't like it, whatever it is. Maybe it's because I've been saying it this way my whole life, but forgive us our trespasses, well, we forgive those who trespass against us. That's just a nice sound, it's nice writing, it's a nice oration. You put debt in there, D-E-B-T, and it just clangs, it falls to the floor. I mean, Jesus said trespasses, and he even repeated that word. It doesn't work the same with debt.
Let's just say that reality is steeped in the occult, okay? And people that are in positions of authority, people that are in positions of power, world leaders like Angela Merkel, many of them have been known to gather at events that seem to be, well, we'll say, very disturbing. One of which was very close to CERN and connected to CERN. About 2016 or 17, I believe it was, I did a video on this. It was probably the most disturbing and dark thing I've ever witnessed and reported on. It was the Gothur Tunnel. And it's basically the longest tunnel under a mountain. But see, there's a myth about this mountain. A lot of people don't dig into this, and this is really interesting. A deal was made between a goat and the people of that area and Satan. They couldn't pass through this mountain. That was the lore. So to be able to get through that mountain, it was already steeped in Satanism, is what I'm saying. The mythos of it to begin with. So when they bored through this mountain, they used something like, was it 66 blades, okay, or 666 blades. It was every bit of this was steeped in the occult. And then what they did was they had a huge production, huge, and they spent a lot of money on it. And they had something like 666 performers. Very strange. But they didn't just have that. They had people dressed as demons, like demons that you could look up in a book. They were dressed identical to it. They had demons descending on people that were workers that were mindlessly going through the, it was basically a telling of a story of humanity and how these workers of the occult somehow have manipulated things. The fact that they had a tunnel going through, because this mountain was supposedly impassable unless this deal was made. And then the townspeople, they tricked this devil. It was very interesting how all of this came together. And so the production itself was steeped in it. But what I understood it to be was the birth of the Antichrist in the world. there was a lead character who looked very much like, you would say, Pan or Baphomet. These are, you know, male and female with a goat head. You know, the whole 9 yards of the occult and Satanism all packed into one, and was leading this event where he was running around and he was ripping over women's dresses and just forcing himself on people, and it was very dark. It was incredibly disturbing. And you have all of the people like Angela Merkel and you know, the heads of France, and they were cheering and applauding and watching this such a disturbing event take place. An event that started with all of the religions of the world creating this like one world blessing over the event to begin with. But what was stranger was how it ended. It ended with, you know, all of these people going outside, and then they were all in the stands, and you had the Baphomet running around, and you had this little baby-looking devil that was heralded and brought into the mix, and they were singing and applauding, and they were so happy, and they were sounding the horns, and then there was on the screen, there was this huge screen, and on the screen you see scarab beetles crawling up, and a very occult symbol of resurrection. And there was a clock. And what was interesting about the end of this event was the clock turned back time, almost like they cracked the code. It was almost like, it felt like a celebration, if you will. Now, I know that seems a little much, but it seemed to me like they changed something. This whole event, it seemed to, you know, signal, it did feel a little bit Rosemary Baby-esque, which is strange because, and very dark, but we have royals. When Prince William and Kate Middleton had their first child, when she brought the baby out to be presented to the public, she was wearing the exact same dress Mia Farrow was in the movie, Rosemary's Baby. It was very strange. So you have all of this occult strange symbolism, not to mention the royals. They did their first portrait, Will and Kate Middleton, and she was wearing the vampire's wife's dress. The vampire's wife's dress. That's what she wore. Now you have now King Charles, who says he's related. He's a blood relative to Vlad the Impaler. He's literally related to Dracula. So here we see all of these world leaders steeped in it, steeped in this dark stuff. Now, I'm not saying they all are dark people. I'm not saying they're all Satanists or doing it, because I don't know. It could be strange coincidences. But when you're a royal and you're presenting your baby, someone should be like, hey, that looks a lot like the dress Mia Farrow wore in Rosemary's Baby. And that was like the Antichrist, so probably not the best, you know, outfit to wear. So in this big event at Gothur Tunnel, which by the way, connected to CERN, they showed you something that looked just like the collider on the screen at the same time. These are all connected. All of this stuff, the Mandela Effect, CERN, all of this stuff, extraplanetary stuff, all the things that are happening right now in the world. Very concerning. We got satellites blanketing the world, right? We got Starlink everywhere. We don't really know what's going on, but I do know this. I do know that this is an amazing time to be alive. And I do know that it doesn't matter how crazy the world seems to get, because Jesus himself was sent to hell. This is in the New Testament, to deliver those from Noah's day that were trapped there. So it's almost like, you know, we may be existing in a plane. They call this the place of the dead, by the way, because we're all physically going to die, right? That's one thing we all have in common. We're all going to physically die. So is it too far-fetched to think that maybe we're more than our physical limitations? Especially when you have things like the Mandela Effect, especially when you see things can change, especially when we have science that backs up the fact that we could be living in something like that. So is something dark going to come out? Are things going to get worse, or are we going to rise to the occasion? And are we going to be set free?
I've heard of Stephen Hawking, the great physicist. Some say he's the best physicist in the world. He's made warnings about using caution at CERN and what may happen if they poke too hard or go too far. I think Mr. Hawking was of the opinion that just because we could, should we? And I don't get the feeling that the people at CERN have taken that advice to heart. It seems like they're going for it, and whatever the consequences will be, that's what they'll be. I mean, if we're talking about merging timelines or something of that nature, the nightmare scenarios that could stem from that are just limitless. I mean, what if the oceans rise? What if they fall? What if the laws of physics are different suddenly? What if gravity isn't what it was? I mean, when you let your imagination run with this one, all kinds of bad things can go on in the world. But I think the worst of it is that these things will change, but when you point out the changes, nobody will believe you. So to me, the nightmare scenario is just losing your mind. People thinking you're losing your mind when all you're seeing is what's reality.
This is no different than it was back in the times of Christ. This is no different today. There's nothing new under the sun. Whatever has been, this is in the scriptures. Whatever's been will be again, and whatever we have now has been before. So this isn't anything new to me. I mean, I do see the world as becoming a much darker place. I do find that these all could be connected. There's so much occult and so much dark symbolism going on today. I mean, people don't even realize they drink like the Monster. We'll say that Monster drink, where it looks like 3 claw marks, but it's actually 3 Hebrew numbers, it's 666. Unleash the beast. People don't even realize that how steeped in darkness we really are. The Travis Scott concert, for example, which made headlines because so many people passed away, the entrance to it was a big mouth, and it was that's a very famous painting of entering into hell. And this is no different than every other celebrity that we see today. Megan Fox talking about how she drinks blood. Children today are raised in such a dark environment that something needs to change, right? So in the scriptures, if we want to, and this is not just in, we'll say, the New Testament. This is in every major religion talks about this day, the day that we're in. If you're in Islam, you're seeing signs of the end. If you're in Judaism, you're seeing signs of the end. If you're in Christianity, you're seeing signs of the end. That's good news, because that means that this darkness is coming to an end completely. As in the days of Noah, so it will be with the days of the Son of Man, which is interesting, because today everybody is kind of going about their business and they're not really paying attention. You talk to them about the Mandela Effect, they may just think you're crazy, or just they're so focused on their phones and what they're being told to think that they don't even think anymore. People are lost today. That's the reason why I got on YouTube to begin with. That's why I worked for Christian TV before I got onto YouTube. That's why I've always tried to put something into the world, because the day that we're in now is a day when people need to wake up.
There are a whole bunch of scientific explanations offered for what the Mandela Effect, and almost all of them will tell you that it's just a flawed human memory. It's a trick of human memory. If you can't remember something clearly, your mind wants to fill in the blanks. They call it confabulation. And it's an easy answer for anybody who wants to be smug on a Mandela Effect chat board to say, you fools, this is nothing but confabulation. It's your own memory playing tricks on you. The numbers are so big now. There are so many people who remember things one way that I don't think mere memory tricks will explain it all away anymore. I don't think that's a very scientific approach anymore, because this is just, there are too many people who remember Dolly having braces in Moonraker, and too many people who remember 4 people sitting in the car in which JFK was killed. So to call it, to offer some simple scientific explanation and call it a trick of memory, I don't think it's quite fair, and I don't think it's quite honest either. If you're making a commercial, why would you put the actors from the movie, in this case Moonraker, why would you put her in there with braces if she didn't wear braces in the scene you're trying to parrot? I mean, that's that's not paying proper respect to the show. And I don't think a commercial maker would do that. You're attempting to kind of mirror what happened in the movie. And in the movie, Dolly wasn't wearing braces, or at least that's what they say now. And in my memory, she was. And there were similar commercials with the Luke, I am your father. Why would you get that line wrong? Why wouldn't you put a little effort into it? Make sure you got the line right. But nobody does. Everywhere you look, it's Luke, I am your father, as if all of us are just remembering it wrong, including people who make a living in commercial TV and movies and parodies and comedy. Luke, I am your father. That's what they all say. You got to wonder why at some point. You got to wonder why nobody gets this right. The people who are making the commercials must believe that Dolly was wearing braces in that famous scene. And you would think that if they made a commercial without her wearing braces, they'd get yelled at. I mean, it would cause trouble. They're saying, you got it wrong, you fool. She wasn't wearing braces. Go look at the movie. But you never hear of that. They make the movie and they make the commercial and they put her in braces and everybody accepts it. I don't understand. I don't understand how that just gets shrugged off. I think most journalists who cover the Mandela Effect do it half-heartedly or superficially. They will trot out the usual Berenstain Bears, Luke, I am your father, and that's as far as they'll go. You know, they'll try to get a laugh out of their readers, and that's that. And they usually outright mock it, but very few of them put in the time to research a little bit. Look for residual artifacts, like the JFK car. You don't see them talking about the museum that has a assassination car with 4 seats instead of 6. You never see that. They do a surface level thing on Mandela. Maybe they're afraid to approach it. Maybe it's a little too cuckoo for most journalists. You know, who wants to get a reputation of being somebody who believes in that stuff? Besides me, I mean.
I believe that one person can light a candle and the darkness will flee from it. So I believe that we actually can have a positive effect in the world. I know for a fact that I've made a difference. Does that mean just because things are so ugly and so dark, does that mean that we can't do anything? Of course we can do something about it. We can rise above it. We can say, I'm not going to go to that concert. I'm not going to buy this product. I'm not going to listen to this individual that's promoting just promiscuity, and I'm gonna focus on things that bring me peace. I'm gonna focus on the fact that I have a God-given purpose. See, this is the thing. All the darkness can try all it wants. Doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because the story's already written and it has a happy ending. So the best thing that we can do is just be better and love people.
Remember that movie Moonraker? Like, this even makes me angry. Like, it sincerely gets me whacked up. Remember Moonraker with the big bad guy, Jaws? Remember Jaws' big metal teeth? Remember that epic scene where he meets the love of his life, Dolly, and they fall, like it's love at first sight, and it was so humorous because he's got metal teeth and she's got braces on. Like, she looks up to him and he looks down on her because she's little, she's petite, she's a nerdy looking girl, she's a geek with braces, and he looks down on her and it's love at first sight and they're smiling at one another. She's got braces, he's got metal teeth. That was the whole point of that scene. Like, it's so memorable, I can even picture it right now. And now you want to tell me that scene never happened? You want to tell me that Dolly never had braces on? Come on. Come on. Like, I'm done. That for me is the smoking gun. For me, millions of people, of course, remember that scene. Again, I want to ask you if it's bad memory. If it's a case of bad memory, then how comes millions of people remember the exact same thing? And for me, this is even personal because, see, I have bad teeth. I got bad teeth since I was a kid. So when I saw that particular scene, I remember just asking my dad, like, hey, that's a pool boy. I remember asking my dad, like, what's that she's wearing in her teeth? And I remember him explaining to me that that's braces. It's meant to, like, line up your teeth. So now I remember that clearly, like that is a very vivid memory, because I had that conversation with my dad, and I remember that scene like it's happened, like it's just happened right now, you know. But now you go to the James Bond website, you go to like the official James Bond website, you go to like the internet, everything you can find on James Bond, and you won't find that scene. I don't know what they're doing at CERN, CERN, but it's definitely messing up we're having alternate memories. The timelines are shifting for different universes. This might sound crazy, but do the research and you'll realize that you're crazy for not believing it. It's not the rest of us who are experiencing the Mandela Effect who are crazy, but you're crazy for thinking that things have always been like that when your memory tells you otherwise, you know, and you can swear it, you know. So now, I don't know what's happening, the glitch in the matrix, the different universes, the different realities. But for me, Dolly not having braces was just it. That was it. Even the color of her dress is now different. Go see that scene, or rather the new scene, or rather the scene that belongs to this universe, not where I'm from. Because where I'm from, that girl definitely has braces. I mean, I'm even afraid of asking my dad about this particular experience, because if he tells me, no, she never had braces, or he tells me, no, we never had that conversation, I'm like, Daddy, remember I asked you what's that, and you told me it's braces made to line up at it, and he goes like, I'll be freaked out, you know, because I'll be like, this is not my real dad, like this is the dad from the other universe, I don't know who you are, sir, you gentleman, I've never, you know, like I don't want to have that experience with my father, I love him way too much, so I'm not even gonna ask him, because I don't want to think I'm crazy when I know I'm not.
Impossible as it sounds, lyrics to many well-known songs we've listened to for decades, if not our entire lives, have mysteriously, retroactively changed, including We Are the Champions by Queen, where Freddie Mercury no longer belts out Of the World at the song's finale. Basically, everyone remembers it that way, making for a classic moment on carpool karaoke.
We are the champions, no time for losers, as we are the champions.
Of the world.
Does he not do it of the world? I always thought he did it of the world.
Crazy.
You think that because he did. Everyone's affected. Not everyone recognizes these changes for what they are, but everyone's affected. The residual evidence on file is this Live Aid concert performed by Freddie back in 1985. And predating the concert, we have residual preservation within Queen's News of the World album liner notes, released back in 1977.